Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about why the swaps are even bigger, how the short squeeze has likely been triggered, how the brokers are trying to find real shares, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this. Over 40% of equity holdings by European funds are in the US versus 15% in 2009. And so we've seen this in the past before, and we've mentioned it. We've seen the involvement of offshore funds, essentially funds that are not in the US. It's why we've talked about the situation with AMC and GME to be even bigger than we think. And we've known that the swap positions are getting even bigger. It's because it's not only the firms that are within the US that are involved with this, but also firms that are outside in Europe. Now, you have to bear in mind, in Europe and other places, there has been stricter rules when it comes to naked shorting, when it comes to suppressing the market. So it's no surprise we're seeing the European fund coming into the US and buying these stocks. And so this is why we've said that the swaps positions are getting bigger. And for those of you who obviously paid attention in the past and thus remember, we've seen firms like Citadel who are, of course, using these offshore companies to try and find ways to suppress AMC, whether it's to find synthetics of AMC, whether it's to take up loans outside the US and then to dump that money back into AMC. We've seen them do it all. And so we have to remember is that it's not just the US firms that are involved with AMC and GME, but firms that are outside the US as well. And it's why we've always said that the squeeze is going to be so big. It's why we've always called it the MOAS, the mother of all short squeezes, because there is so much money that is involved, not just with the firms in the US, but pretty much the firms globally. And so that's why the shorts have been panicking recently. Because when you take a look at the derivative positions, you realize the reported 700 trillion in bank derivatives isn't even a full data set. It's no coincidence that the Bank for International Settlement has ceased reporting global or OTC derivatives outstanding. And so you can see how the two links together. And you have to realize is that firms like this are involved with one another, and it's how they use it to then short AMC, to then short GME. And so the positions that we've already seen are already so big. Now, when you take a look at the overall bank derivatives, it's 700 trillion. But remember, this is only the data that they're reporting. There are still tons they're not showing. And so the same applies for AMC swaps, for GME swaps as well. The ones in which we've exposed in the past before are the ones we can get our hands on. But already with that outstanding amount of all of those swaps, all of those synthetics, it's very, very likely that there are more data that's obviously hidden away in which we don't have access to or have yet to be found. And so that's why you can see with all of this, you can see why regulations are trying to obviously hide it away. And this is why we've always said we are putting so much pressure on these short sellers, because we've seen it in the past before, and we're starting to see the cracks in the wall right now with all these glimpses of evidence that are showing how they are not able to hold on to all of this anymore. Especially with recently what is happening with GME and how that's applying pressure to the shorts as well. And you also have to realize how many articles and TV spots were posted throughout the years saying Bitcoin is dead, yet here we are. Now, this is about Bitcoin, but also about AMC and GME. And Bitcoin is just a very good example. Throughout the years, people have been saying that Bitcoin was going to die, especially when you saw a drastic pullback on Bitcoin. Everyone was calling the end. But what we saw time and time again was that despite the massive crashes that happened to Bitcoin, it came back bouncing, it made all-time highs, and we see it go all the way. If people have been following Bitcoin from at least 2018, you would have seen it go to 30K, back down to 3K, and fast forward to where we are now, it's over 100K. So that's the power of obviously longevity. But what we have to realize is that everyone was saying that Bitcoin was going to die. Now, the same applies for AMC and GME. Everyone is trying to say that AMC and GME is going to die, but you have to remember we have already survived for the last 5 years and we're continuously improving. And it wouldn't shock me to think that AMC and GME will become the next version of Bitcoin within this generation in terms of the returns, in terms of the potential that it has. And so that's what we have to realize. Now, let's talk about how GME is applying so much pressure to the short and why that's beneficial to not only GME but also AMC as well. So we see here The Bitcoin at 500 million and surging Q2 profits, GameStop's warrant threatens massive short squeeze. Now, we've already known with the investment of GameStop into Bitcoin, and we've already seen how that investment has turned out. But the big thing here is obviously about the warrants. So GME is issuing out a warrant as a dividend, which is essentially a way for you to buy shares of GME at a fixed price. And this is going to cause massive disturbances for the short sellers because it's allowing them to actually be realizing that they need to locate real shares. And so this is causing panic not only to the short sellers, but also the brokers as well. And when we see things like this, that is forcing them to put up liquidity, that is forcing them to try and find real shares. Remember, it triggers the squeeze of AMC and GME. The reason why it triggers both is like we've said in the past, when one or another stock squeezes, so whether it's AMC or GME squeezes first, the other one will squeeze along with it because there's mutual short sellers in both. And so if AMC squeezes first and it takes up all the liquidity, forcing the shorts to cover, remember they have to cover GME as well. Vice versa, if GME were to squeeze first and that takes on all the liquidity, that means they will also have to cover AMC. So you can see how it goes hand in hand. And you can see, you don't say GameStop from meme to a financial masterclass. So we've seen it with AMC already, how people are realizing how AMC is a golden investment because of its fundamentals. We're seeing the same for GME as well right now. We've always said there has been differences in the way AMC and GME operate. The way AMC has been operating is to obviously improve their operations, is to invest in the existing market structure and obviously improve on it. GME took a different stance in terms of they had a bigger cash pile and they tried to find other ways of outside the industry to improve them. And so both things have worked out for both companies, and that's how we're seeing both AMC and GME to become fundamentally good companies. And now let's talk about this. All the brokers have our data of how many actual shares are out there on AMC and GME. And so for them to think about doing a cash tells you they know how many shares are realistically out there. You have to remember, with all of these brokers, they have extreme access to data that we don't have, especially because they work with certain institutions as well. So they obviously know how many synthetics have been created, or at the very least, for their side and the institutions that they're working with, how many synthetics have been created. And so they know that if right now GME is doing something where it's going to force them to find shares and they aren't able to, that's why they'll be giving out cash. You can see, considering GameStop is offering a dividend with actual monetary value, I have a feeling we'll see a plethora of issues with the distribution varying from broker to broker. And so this is what we talked about in times like this, where you're forcing these brokers, where you're forcing these short sellers to find actual shares, to find things that will actually provide value, it's going to cause problems. And you're already seeing this problem arising right now. Firstly, from eToro, if you hold real GME shares, so is eToro implying that the shares are fake to begin with? Because of, we've already known of what firms have done in the past with how brokers have been helping firms. We've seen the situation happen with MMTLP. We've seen the situation happen with plenty of other stocks as well. And so in this case, if eToro is saying if you're holding real GME shares, are they actually just implying that there are fakes and that they are also offering out fakes? And if you were holding onto the fake shares of GME, then you wouldn't actually be issued out a warrant. And so definitely, and this isn't just the people who are using eToro, this is of course just the general people out there. If you weren't issued a warrant nor a cash dividend, and we'll talk about cash dividend in a second as well, but if you weren't issued a warrant, then it's very likely you're holding on to the synthetic shares, and that's something you obviously have to bring up. And if you were to actually be issued a cash dividend, it would mean, and it wouldn't be 100%, but it would likely mean that you hold real shares, but they are not able to find any more shares, and they don't want to rehypothecate, and that's why they're issuing a cash dividend. Another problem that we're seeing is multiple reports that Robinhood trading app is down this morning. And so the dividend is yet to obviously be issued, but we're suddenly seeing, and I've always said this, you're always seeing these coincidences when something happens with AMC or something happens with GME. We've seen AMC in the past before where they do something extremely massive and then suddenly you're seeing the price glitching. You're seeing these short sellers starting to take out loans. Now we're seeing the same happen with GME, And we also are seeing GME price glitches, and we're seeing brokers to be down. And so, like I said, it has to get to a point where none of it can be a coincidence anymore. It truly is just showing how AMC and GME has the ability to alter these brokers, to affect these institutions at any time when something pivotal happens. And so with what we're seeing here, if we're seeing these brokers are being affected, then you can see how this is obviously going to be a problem for them and why they're trying to find real shares of GME right now. As always, not to financial advice, so do take a second. If so, make sure to do your own due diligence and research, and I'll catch you guys next time.